Good evening and welcome to the RO Sports Show, brought to you by RO Yellow, Richmond County's online business directory. And for this week, we are being joined by new athletic director at Richmond Senior High School, Rob Ransom. And we're actually live on location here at the school. We appreciate you joining us. So this is actually your first week as athletic director, correct?
This is my first week. Yeah, it's been a busy week. Just lots of different things going on as far as learning the ins and outs of the job. And I'm sure that'll continue throughout the year. So
I'm sure it will. So speaking of that, delve into that a little bit more. On a day-to-day basis, the day-to-day operations of an athletic director, what does that entail?
Well, let's see. Today I've talked about ticket sales. I've arranged for buses to park. I've gone to have contracts signed for coaches, covered lunch duty, covered breakfast duty. So there's been a lot of different hats worn today. And it's just a small day. Worked on eligibility some today,
So it's not just, I guess people may think it's just, lining up schedules, that sort of thing, but it's more than just sports, right?
It's more than just sports. It's a AD job and an AP job. So I'm also assistant principal here at the school.
Oh, okay. So talking about eligibility, what does that mean exactly?
Students have to be cleared and have to be eligible with the state, and they have to go in. You have to go in and make sure the paperwork's correct on that. And I'm learning about that process as I go. They have to have attendance. They have to have passed a certain number of courses. Have to make sure physical's on file. They have concussion paperwork, and all those type of things have to be done.
All right. So looking forward for the rest, at least the fall sports, what do you expect to see from Raider sports moving forward as we get further into the season?
Well, we're excited about our football team. The new lights are fantastic. I thought it created a great atmosphere at the game Friday night. So we look forward to continuing that throughout the season. Our volleyball team's off to a good start. They're playing really well. We've had a pretty good turnout for that. All our sports have already started except for golf. I think they start next week. We're just excited for this fall season and the energy it brings. I encourage everybody to join the Booster Club. If you're willing to come out and support, we would like for you to join the Booster Club. We still have a few reserve tickets left on sale, so if you're interested in that, please contact the office. We can get you hooked up with that. A lot of different ways to get involved, and we look forward to seeing you out here at the ball games.
All right, sounds good. Richmond Senior High School Athletic Director Rob Ransom, we really appreciate it. We're going to take a break like we usually do. When we come back, me and Deon are going to be telling you all about the sports from this past week and what to look forward to of the upcoming week. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the Raider Wrap-Up, part of the RO Sports Show, as always, brought to you by RO Yellow. We appreciate Rob Ransom for joining us on the desk. Now, of course, Deon Cranford. So, Deon, it was a huge victory to start off the show here, 48-2, Richmond Raider football team over Clayton Comets.
Yes, it was.
What impressed you the most out of the game?
Well, we talked about it a little bit last week, and I think even Coach Till talked about it. I'm still all about these kickers. I love the kickers, and I mean, you sit there thinking, what? The offense, the defense? But the field position game was just ridiculous. I mean, I think Richmond's average starting field position was around the 50-yard line. I think Clayton's average starting field position was around the 20, because most of the kickoffs went into the end zone. But then you kind of pull from that a little bit. Well, they had the 2 field goals, and they had several really key punts that really helped the field position game. But you pull back from that a little bit, and then we go back and look at that defensive line. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, they were in the backfield before the ball could even be handed off half the time. I mean, they just dominated that. Again, we knew Clayton was going to be a little bit down and probably a little bit deflated considering the situations with the allegations and their coach resigning just a few days before. So I wasn't expecting 100% from them, but still, our guys just basically walked through that offensive line and were in the backfield. Held Clayton to just 29 yards in the first 3 quarters combined.
Wow.
29 yards. So just incredible showing. Defense and special teams. And, of course, I don't think we were expecting anything less from the offense. They came out firing on all cylinders. 2 big passes to Dalton Stroman from Caleb Hood for those 2 early touchdowns. And then, of course, I believe it was Jaheim Covington had the rushing touchdown there in the first quarter. And once those quick strike touchdowns happened, I mean, it was kind of over at that point, unfortunately. But the good news is they got a lot of players in. We got to see a lot of guys It was exciting first night. So.
Yes, it was, and I believe they had gone up by 21-0 in the first 5 minutes, something like that.
Yeah,
it was really quick.
It was very fast. Yeah.
And you're right. Once those quick strikes got in there, I mean, the game was over pretty much by that point. But again, you're right. It seemed like the offense was hitting on all cylinders. Defense was playing great. Just an all-around great game for the Richmond Raiders. So moving forward, they go to Anson this week. Now, this is, if you're people like us, of course, Anson is a rivalry that goes back a long time, one that we remember. They've kind of gotten away from it over the last few years.
Yeah.
But what do you expect to see this coming Friday?
Well, honestly, Anson's actually looking to improve a little bit. They've made a lot of improvements on their stadium, so a lot of us from Richmond County, it'll be our first time experiencing that. They've had a new PA system installed. They've had new field turf put down, and I was told recently they even had new track put on. So the stadium has actually been revamped, so they're trying to build a better atmosphere. They're trying to build a little bit of excitement. I think it's going to be a much improved Anson County than the ones we saw 2, 3, 4 years ago. But, they had a tough loss to Monroe on Saturday night. Their game got moved to Saturday. On Saturday night, they stayed in that game pretty much the whole time. And Monroe's, historically has been a tough program, so it was good to see them put up a fight. I still think we're going to see a lot of what we saw this past Friday. I don't think it's going to be a close game by any stretch. But the good news is, in the past when that's predicted to happen, and even when there's been one heavy favorite, that game always gets packed out. I mean, there won't be an empty seat. Anson will still bring everybody they have. It's a fun game. It's a border battle. It's a rivalry game, and I'm so glad they brought it back.
Absolutely. Just right across the PD River down US 74. Very excited for that as well. Do want to mention big congratulations, as if there's not enough already, but to quarterback Caleb Hood, wide receiver Jacoby Baldwin, and wide receiver Dalton Stroman, who were held later after a weight room session. Coach Till got Duke University on the phone, let the guys know that they have been offered full scholarships. So, of course, congratulations to them. Not the first for some of them, probably not the last for all of them, right?
It won't be the last for any of them. And I will say this, to throw another one out there for Caleb Hood. He just needed one pass to move into the number 2 spot in school history for pass completions. I believe he was 54 out of first place, and he needed to do it in 4 games to match it in the time that Leon Ziegler did it. Unfortunately, when you're in a game like that and you get those quick strikes, you don't get a lot of pass completions because the ones you get go for a long way. So he only got 7, so he needs 47 in the next 3 games. And when you consider 2 of those are against Butler and a Cardinal Gibbons team that just knocked off the number 1 team in the state, it's going to be interesting to see if he can do it now. But if anybody can, I think he can.
Yeah, and I'm sure he can, although I'm sure if you asked him, he'd probably say we'd rather get the quick strikes, get the quick touchdown.
Absolutely. I know he don't look at it. The records are for those are for the fans, us. But we would like to see him do it. But I believe he could. It's just going to be the opportunity, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let's move down a level to the JV squad. They, of course, starting up this week, they'll be facing Anson at home, coming off, 10 years in a row without losing a game, it feels like. So what do you expect from them?
Well, I was doing a little bit of Richmond-Anson history, and the most points ever scored in a Richmond football game by the Raiders was 80, and that was in a JV game versus Anson. So, and I believe that was the season. That was way back in the 70s, so I'm really digging in the books for that one. So just to throw that little tidbit out there. But it's interesting. I got to see the JV team practice a little bit this week, and kind of was watching Coach Hope run through some plays with them. It's interesting when you're looking at the JV program because technically they're always in a rebuilding year. Every year is a rebuilding year because you're starting over from scratch. And the fact that he's been able to put together so many wins and have all these undefeated seasons. There's what I was looking for. Undefeated seasons has been really impressive, and I'm interested to see what they bring to the table. I guess technically we don't really know yet. But I do know they have some good athletes. I know they have a couple that have stayed in JV and a couple that have moved up from 9th grade. And there was a lot of talent in the middle school pool last year. So I know he's got a lot to work with. It's going to be interesting to see what they pull off.
Absolutely. Coach Hope does a great job every year. As you mentioned, just basically turning it over 100% almost every year. So, of course, good luck to them this week. Actually, their game is tonight, so good luck to them tonight. Moving on to some other sports. Of course, we're going to talk about volleyball. They've been busy this week. So what's going on with the Lady Raiders?
Well, a couple of years ago, they had that huge senior class, and they had 2 back-to-back seasons where they just dominated everybody, especially in conference play, and they just won so many games. And then last week was a little bit of rebuilding season. They just lost a lot of that talent all at once. Now these girls are coming back with some experience, some confidence. I got to see them this week, and I mean, it was just like, it's that same look to the team a few years ago where they just seem to all know what each other's doing all the time. I mean, they react, they're good at calling each other off of plays. It's I got it, and others are backing off, and it's just the communication's really good. The camaraderie, the way they work together is really good. I was very impressed. They look like a completely different group of girls since last year. And they're currently 4-0, so what they're doing is working. Of course, they've got a tough slate ahead of them, but I mean, I wouldn't count these girls out. I think they're definitely in the running for the conference title this year.
Absolutely. And then finally, to finish up this portion of the show, the Lady Raiders tennis team got a little bit of a late start due to weather. They took on Montgomery Central earlier, I think it was last week, and then faced Purnell Sweat earlier this week. Unfortunately, started the season off with 2 losses, but new head coach Neely Herndon has seen some improvements in doubles and singles matches.
Yeah, one of the challenges, especially in something like tennis, where they're a team, but they're competing individually. Some of those single matches, I mean, they go an hour and a half longer. And, when you get behind early, especially, you fall behind 3-0, 4-0 in a 6-set match. You could get a little deflated. What I do like about these girls is that, a lot of them are athletes in other sports, and it's showing because they're still battling. Even when they know there's not much chance at all they're ever going to get back into it, they're still battling, they're still fighting at the end, and they're still cheering each other on. And that's how they're going to grow. I mean, most of these girls have probably never played, and if they have, probably played very little. So it was nice to see the coaching going on. Neely was standing at the fence, giving out commands, while they were playing. The girls were cheering each other on from neighboring courts, and so it's going to take some. Unfortunately, it's going to take some bruises, but they're going to get there.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for the Raider wrap-up portion of the RO Sports Show. Deon, of course, as always, appreciate it. We're going to take another quick break. We're going to head back to the studio where Russell Parker is going to join us for Ross Racing. We'll be right back. While the Cup Series took a week off in preparation for the Southern 500, the Xfinity and Truck Series headed north to Wisconsin and Canada. The trucks raced at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park just 50 miles out from Toronto. It was their second race in the playoffs, and for the second in a row, we saw Brett Moffitt take the checkered flag, this time in dominating fashion at the only road course on the truck schedule. Welcome back to the RO Sports Show's Ross Racing, brought to you by RO Yellow. And of course, joining me for the ride, as always, is Russell Parker. So let's talk about this performance by Moffitt, because many eyes have been on Ross Chastain to be the favorite to win the title, but the defending 2018 champion has been showing nothing but strength early on in the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. Moffitt has now back-to-back wins. He's just keeping other drivers from being able to lock themselves in. And overall, it's just been a really, really strong showing by him. He's also the defending champion, so it makes sense for him to be this good. But a lot of hype still around Ross Chastain. I really do feel like he's going to continue on to be that threat to win the title. But right now, Brett Moffitt has definitely got it going. And going to Vegas, he can very well do it 3 in a row and sweep the entire first round.
Sure could. Well, the playoffs started with a very tight point difference. With the exception of Moffitt and Chastain, there's still not much separation in this round of 8. All 8 ran inside the top 10 during the Canadian Tire race. Is this a testament to the competitiveness of the Truck Series?
No doubt about it. I mean, these guys, they get overlooked compared to the Cup Series and even the Xfinity Series, but you really look at this level, and it's just kind of an equal playing field. Now, if Kyle Busch wasn't racing in the early races, we probably could see some guys take off with wins, but if you just forget about that part of it, you see a lot of competitiveness between these guys. And, these truckers, they know how to get it done every single week. And it's just, I love watching these races because they always have some side-by-side action. You saw it pretty good at Canadian Tire this past week. Of course, Bristol's going to give it to you no matter what. And and you've seen it at Las Vegas earlier this season. There was a lot of good side-by-side action there as well. So these guys know how to do it. These guys get it done every single week. With the exception to Tyler Ankrum, everyone's really bunched up. Ankram's about, I would say, I think he's 24 points back. So you think about that, that's still easy to make up, but it's going to be very tough to do. And with his experience, not quite being up there like some of these other drivers, I would say that he may not make it in, but you never know with these type of situations. Of course, Johnny Sauter's even in the bottom. Who would have thought Johnny Sauter could be out in the first round? So It's really, really intense right now between these truck drivers.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, Las Vegas coming up is an elimination race. So which two drivers do you think will be hanging up the gloves early on a championship season?
I have to say Tyler Ankrum. He's a great driver, and he's won a race this season, but I do feel like he's going to be knocked out. And I'm not saying that to knock him off, but he definitely needs to get some more experience going on. I think he'll continue on. He could surprise me, though. This is Vegas. But at the same time, I do feel like that maybe I want to say maybe Matt Crafton might be that one guy who just kind of gets knocked out by a big surprise. But with how tight the points are, anything can happen still, and it's really hard to say. So I'm just going to throw a name out there, Matt Crafton, by some bad luck.
All right. Well, another driver we saw in victory lane at Road America was Christopher Bell. Now, surely he's running out of space for his checkered flag stickers on his car because he's now up to 6 wins on the season, and he continues to strengthen his position for the Xfinity Series playoffs.
No doubt about that.
That's everybody knows about Bell.
Yeah.
That's enough about Bell, though. Let's jump right over to In the Groove. Russell, who impressed you this week?
Well, for the Xfinity Series, I'm going to say Kaz Gralla. He hasn't really raced a whole lot in the Xfinity Series this season. He got a ride there, and he did really well. Started 11th, finished 5th. Great run. Alex Tagliani, he drove one of Kyle Busch's trucks this week and got a strong finish. Started 4th, finished 2nd. As you would expect out of him, he's a great road course racer. And, these two drivers are really on fire right now just off these one races.
All right. Well, those are your drivers in the groove. And as we mentioned at the top of the segment, the Cup guys had a rare weekend off, but they'll get right back into it as the haulers are heading for Darlington Raceway
tonight,
for the
actually.
Bojangles Southern 500. You're absolutely right. For the past few years now, the Darlington race has been declared as Throwback Week for NASCAR. So, Russell, you're going to be in attendance for your first race at the Lady in Black. How are the drivers going to fare in this dance?
Well, this is one of the most historic races. It's one of the crown jewels of NASCAR. This race has always been a fun one. And, you can go all the way back to, so many decades of awesome racing at this track. And I see a lot of it going to happen this time around. Brad Keselowski had a good run at this track last year and got the win. Team Penske kind of dominated that race. But I do expect to see Harvick, Kyle Busch, your regulars up there. Now, Kyle Busch actually has been on a 10-race losing streak, which is probably not too bad for some people. But for him, it's like, what, really?
Yeah.
So I do expect to see him trying to get back in it. But Denny Hamlin's also got a win here as well, and he's been on fire lately, so I would not count him out.
And I do want to remind folks, Darlington not as far away from Rockingham as some people think. Mm-hmm. Don't know if you'll have time to make it down there for this race, but if you haven't gotten tickets and all that yet. But again, I want to remind you, not that far. Head down to Darlington and check out some good racing. Now, speaking of Darlington, it's time to take a look at Track Facts, brought to you by royellow.com, Richmond County's newest online business directory. Darlington Raceway construction began all the way back in 1949, which would be 70 years ago. It's all those decades you were talking about of good racing. It was dubbed by NASCAR fans and drivers as the Lady in Black and the track too tough to tame. And that is a lot of T's. The track was built on top of a cotton and peanut field. There's a lot of those down in South Carolina. Well, the length is 1.366 miles and has a unique egg shape to its oval configuration. The reason for the egg shape was because when builder Harold Braslington bought the 70 acres from farmer Sherman Ramsey, he promised he would build the track like that to keep from disturbing Sherman's minnow pond. Can't make this stuff up.
I wonder if the minnow pond is still there. I'm going to have to go on there and look for it when I get on there Sunday.
Can't be that big, right? Even if it is still there?
Yeah, it couldn't be too big.
Well, speaking of Darlington, Russell, you got any favorite moments from Darlington?
One that always sticks out to me is Ricky Rudd's side-by-side finish in that race. I forgot who he battled, but yeah, Ricky Rudd had a really awesome finish in that race there. And but recently, I'm loving the Throwback Weekend.
Yes.
They've been doing it for, I think, 5 years now. There's been some really awesome paint schemes, and there's a lot of history going into that. I think it's a cool thing about the Throwback Weekend is that you get to see all these things that you didn't, like for someone like my age who's about 20-something who did not grow up in those eras, are getting to see what it was like, kind of, and to be able to learn some history. So for me, just seeing the history out there is the funnest part, and the most memorable things are, how they do these things. So for recent memory, it's definitely been that. But Ricky Rudd's side-by-side finish, definitely the top one.
All right, and that is your track facts, brought to you by royellow.com. But we're not quite done with the facts. The theme for this year's Throwback Weekend, as you just mentioned, is 1990 to 1994. Now, I have to say, I'm 36, quickly going on 37. So for a throwback to be the early 90s makes me feel a lot older than I should, because I can definitely remember 1990 to 1994. But, Russell, what NASCAR-related facts do you have of that era?
So the champions of that era, it should come no surprise that Earnhardt got his last 4 wins in that era. 94, he actually clinched that at Rockingham, that last race there. Alan Kulwicki got it in 1992, kind of interrupted Earnhardt's little 4 championship streak. But
Other than that, dominated.
Yeah, really. And of course, Jeff Gordon was the Rookie of the Year in '93, and he won the championship after this era. So you could say Earnhardt's era stopped here, and Jeff Gordon's began after that. So.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but isn't it safe to say that the early 90s with Gordon coming in 93, maybe, and obviously throughout the rest of the 90s, but that's when that big rivalry where you were either Earnhardt or you were Gordon began, wasn't it?
No doubt about it. You had to pick a side pretty much back then. And the funny thing is, those drivers actually got along with each other, but when they realized
how it goes.
When they realized the fans were kind of dividing, they played along with it, and this is really cool to see the story. Fox Sports actually did a really cool documentary on that recently, and it's really, really good, and I highly recommend it because it definitely goes in some really detailed things about how that rivalry came out to be. And when you got Earnhardt fans throwing beer cans at you, you're definitely getting a lot of a lot of heat, and you got a big rivalry there.
Yeah, and that means at that point you're doing something right, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, some more facts here, rather. Bill Elliott won Most Popular Driver Award in each year except 1990. Darrell Waltrip, it would be the last time someone other than Elliott or an Earnhardt would win the award.
Yeah, right now, after Junior retired, Chase Elliott won it right after him, and I think that's going to continue on for the foreseeable future, at least the next 20 years, I believe.
Yeah. So, speaking of Rockingham, you brought that up about Earnhardt. Tell us who some of the Rockingham winners were during that time.
Well, you got Kyle Petty, Alan Kulwicki, those guys were there. Rusty Wallace has 3 wins in that era. Earnhardt, which I said earlier, he clinched his 7th title there. Bill Elliott's got him a win in 1992, and Davey Allison. Those guys kind of were big right there, especially Kyle Petty. He and Rusty Wallace. Those guys kind of knew that track really well.
Yeah, and talking about Rockingham, especially back then, you used to see a lot of these guys in the community when they would come here. You'd see them at, unfortunately, what is closed now, the Little Bo Steakhouse. A lot of these drivers would go there. You'd see them at local fundraisers, barbecue dinners. That's the time when I met Davey Allison, was at a fundraiser at the Catholic Church beside what is now Cole Auditorium. And so it was just really cool to see a lot of those guys hanging out with the people.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, when you grow up around a racetrack, too, you kind of feel it's kind of natural to see these guys run. So you don't even think of them as celebrities. Like, okay, if these guys are here, you think everyone, and you're a kid, you think, okay, everybody's got a racetrack, but not everybody. So everyone who's got one is pretty fortunate to have one because it's really a unique entertainment style to have.
Yeah, and in the beginning, I know we've seen NASCAR spread out to some larger metropolitan areas, but in the beginning, that's what made NASCAR so special, was being in smaller towns like Rockingham, like Darlington, where the guys could go out and be in the community and not be swamped by 2,000 people. So.
Definitely.
Well, it's not Throwback Weekend without the paint schemes, so why don't we take a look at some of our personal favorites. So, you want to do this?
Yeah, well, perhaps the most popular one that's being driven this weekend will be Bubba Wallace's orange, green, purple, yellow livery. It honors Adam Petty's ARCA Racing Series. Of course, Adam Petty, he passed away many years ago, but in 1998, he drove this car here, and it's very iconic. It's a very unique car, and I think it's really cool. I know it's definitely got some weird colors on it, but I think that's what makes it cool. And of course, it was 45, so it's 43 here for this throwback. But and of course, they got Victory Junction on there, which is Kyle Petty and Richard Petty's their their charity, which was founded in the name of Adam Petty. Yep. So it all comes back full circle there, and it's really awesome.
Absolutely. Up next, if you don't recognize this one, then you've probably never seen Days of Thunder. William Byron is set to drive the classic from the movie, even with the same sponsor, City Chevrolet, which is a real sponsor. I love this one.
Yeah, Rick Hendrick actually provided a lot of the equipment for that movie, and that movie was kind of about Hendrick himself in a way. And
part filmed here in Rockingham too.
Yeah, some of it was filmed here, and there's a lot of uniqueness to it. The fact that it's on Hendrick's car, the 24, which I believe that would have been the number in Days of Thunder was going to be Jeff Gordon's number.
Okay.
But they went in 24, so it's kind of a situation here where you got Jeff Gordon's car driving what would have been his, I guess you can say. But yeah, definitely a unique car.
Yeah, and I mean at this point it doesn't get any more early '90s NASCAR than Days of Thunder. So what do we got next?
Well, we got Stewart Haas Racing. They're honoring their team's co-owner, which is of course Tony Stewart. He's won 3 championships, and he's got 3 paint schemes to go with that. Smoke won all of his championships in each of these numbers, each of these paint schemes. Of course, the first 2 on the left, you see those were his Home Depot cars, and then he had one on the 14, which is actually going to be driven by Clint Boyer. He did have the 14 car, so it's almost like the same car he drove before. Not really a whole lot of change. But yeah, these are definitely some iconic cars in NASCAR.
I do notice all 3 have different numbers. I always thought he kept to one number. I guess I was wrong.
No. Those are Kurt Busch.
Gotcha.
Excuse me, Daniel Suarez.
I see it now. The ones in the bottom there on the photos are actually when Tony Stewart was racing.
Of course, they got to keep the numbers for those drivers who are racing, but all 3 of his drivers have got one.
All right. Up next, Paul Menard will be driving the 21 car of Wood Brothers Racing, and the car honors late team founder Glenn Wood, who founded the oldest team in NASCAR. And this one kind of looks more modern to me.
Yeah, it's definitely...
maybe it's the car.
It could be the car, but definitely that number is a big throwback.
Yes, it is.
If I'm not mistaken, and I can't recall the history completely off the top of my head here, but I believe that car was actually raced on Daytona Beach.
Okay.
So, or at least
the very beginning.
Yeah, pretty much the very beginning. And like I said, Wood Brothers Racing is is the oldest team in NASCAR, still running today, and still finding success every year. They typically get a win still, so they're not actually out of it.
All right. Who else we got?
Well, we got Bill Elliott. We mentioned him earlier. He won the most popular driver awards so many times back in his day. Well, his son, Chase Elliott, won it last year, and he's going to deck out in his father's 1981 scheme in a 9 car. It's a really I like how they threw back the number scheme as well. It's not like the current one, and I really do like that Napa kind of jumped on board with going all white on their number.
I do like that. Logo. I also noticed on the side there, beside the back left wheel, is the old school Mountain Dew logo. They even went old school with it as well. So Russell, we're going to save this last one for you, but no, that's not Kevin Harvick's car you're seeing there. That is your man, Joey Logano, and in the same shell paint scheme that Kevin Harvick drove in the same season the 2 champions had contact at Pocono. Logano made the comment that Harvick's wife was the one who wore the fire suit in the family. Fighting words.
Yeah, that was, of course, that's the same scheme that beat Mark Martin during that time of that season. And I was upset about that because everybody loves Mark Martin. They don't want to see him lose in a race. But yeah, that was one of the funniest moments ever in NASCAR. It's recent. It's pretty recent, but it's still. I think I like the fact that Shell and Pennzoil kind of went back and said, "Hey, how can we make this unique?" And it's kind of a play on what Logano said. There's actually a really funny video because Brittany Logano, Joey's wife, she actually came up to him while standing in front of the car, threw diapers at him, says, "Your turn to change the diapers," and she was actually wearing the fire suit, so
nice.
They were playing on that.
All right, well, if you want to see more throwback paint schemes, you'll of course have to head to Darlington Raceway, and Russell has his tickets already. Make sure you have yours too. And now, just like we always do before we end the show, time to make some predictions. The Cup and Xfinity Series will both be dancing with the Lady in Black. Who's scoring victory this weekend?
Well, for the Xfinity Series, I'm going to take Dale Earnhardt Jr. on this one. He's racing this one-off race here. He's going to be driving a throwback scheme of Dale Earnhardt Sr., and it looks really nice. And I do feel like he has the experience, and he's going to win this race over the younger guys. But For the Cup Series, I'm going to go on a limb, and like I said earlier, Team Penske had a very successful night last year at this race. I'm going to go with Ryan Blaney, the one who wasn't really up there as much as Brad and Joey were, but I think Blaney is definitely going to find some success Sunday night.
All right, there you go. Darlington is set to be raced. That is going to do it for this edition of Ross Racing. That's also going to wrap up the RO Sports Show. All of that brought to you by RO Yellow. That is Russell Parker. Again, we appreciate Rob Ransom, the athletic director from the senior high, for joining us earlier, as well as Deon Cranford. I am Matt Harrelson, and we'll see you guys right back here next week for another episode of the RO Sports Show. Have a great week.